What's up everybody, Jonathan Gauthier here. Welcome to another video. Now in the prior video, we talked about the 5 ways I use my legs the most when training horses. And I had originally made these videos in one of the series on the Comfort Zone Horse Training video series to complement 2 segments where I talk about the 5 exercises and the 5 drills that I do the most on a day-to-day basis and that I use the most in my program. And so usually I talk a lot about how to use your legs or how to use your hands during these exercises and drills, but this time I wanted to really focus on the drill and exercises themselves and decided to make videos, separate videos within the series where I explain a little bit more in details the 5 ways I like to use my legs the most and the 5 hand positions that I use the most when training my horses. So based on the feedback that I got from everyone that really liked these 2 topics added to that series, and also the positive feedback that I got from the YouTube video about how I use my legs the most, then I decided to make another video on those 5 hand positions that I use the most while training my horses. So if you're ready, let's get after it. This video is sponsored by Coro. Coro is the ultimate online shop for horse people, kind of like Amazon. They offer a wide range of equine products from grooming and barn supplies, tack supplements, and everything in between. And that shipped directly to you at low cost and lightning speed. As one of the fastest growing online retailer, Coro adds over 100 products to their shop each week, so you can be pretty confident to find what you're looking for. They're pretty much the #1 source for all things horse, and all the products that they recommend and sell are tried and trusted, so you can be sure to be browsing through quality products from the industry's leading brands. On top of all that, Coro has some of the lowest prices online and outstanding customer service there for you to answer any questions you may have. And honestly, it's really refreshing to deal with a company that's built and ran by horse people for horse people. So go and check them out at www.coroshop.com and be sure to use promo code ComfortZone10 for 10% off your first purchase. Now back to the video. Now the #1 way that I will position my hands obviously is going to be right above the shoulders. Now the final product of a really broke horse, you want to be able to guide your horse within that tiny little box right above the shoulders. So this is the final product where you're riding one-handed with romals or with split reins. So riding two-handed right above each shoulder is going to be the best hand position that will eventually lead to that. Now, within the other hand's position, we go wide, we go low, we go high, we go forward, and we go back. But this is really where it all starts from. So the original signal where you just lift your hands just a little bit and you lift the shoulders as if the shoulders were 2 weights attached to a string and you just want to lift them up. This is also the place where you'll be probably the most precise and the strongest. And it's also the place where, assuming your horse holds its head in a decent position, in a decent level position, then this is where you will have the best leverage with the bit or with the snaffle bit. So this is really the go-to starting point when start a hand position when training your horses, and from there you can move in other directions to help yourself depending on the type of bits that you have or depending on the type of horse that you're riding or where you're at in your program. So right above the shoulder is where I'll start from, and we move on from there. The second position that I like to use a lot is going to be very similar to right above the shoulder, but I'm going to stretch my arms and reach forward, reach straight out in front of me. And this is where I'll be probably around mid-neck or in front of the horns anyway. And so the more forward that you have your hand, the more of the leverage you're using, sometimes overusing that leverage if you're using a long shank bit or even with a short shank bit. And it's quite of an awkward pull with the snaffle, not very effective, but it's the place where I will go when I feel that my horse's original reaction to my contact. So let's say I go right here above the shoulder and take a contact, and its initial reaction is to get away from that by raising its neck that way. In order to get rid of that and have my horse stay level and go straight into collection from a slight signal, and in order to fix that issue where he's getting away from that pressure or escaping that pressure by raising its head, in some cases, if a horse is really fighty, he might just really you want to stick its head up and get away from the pressure that way, well then sometimes pulling down and just fighting against the horse is not the best way. So in some cases, what I will do is I will stretch my arm straight up and I will raise my hands straight up, okay? And then it's making the horse really uncomfortable. Therefore, by over leveraging in the mouth and by really lifting the horse's head up and having that bit come in the back of its mouth, is going to be really uncomfortable for the horse. So I'm not going to be doing very fast movements when doing this. I'm going to really progressively increase the pressure, but I'm going to purposefully make my horse quite uncomfortable by holding its head up that way until he decides to lower its head. Now again, the goal is not to have our horses with their head down. Here, what I'm trying to do is trying to find a way to convince my horse to stop trying to get away from the initial pressure by raising its head and focus a little bit more on what my hands are asking. So this is something that I will go to whenever I feel that I have to, and then once I have a horse that's like, okay, that I literally don't want to be able to actually make him lift its head up. I want that when I stretch my arms out and lift up, I want my horse to be like, okay, you know, and I want my horse to not, to make a good decision at this point. And sometimes, like I said, it requires you, you know, you kind of having to go through this phase where at first the horse may be like, whoa, my God, what are you doing? And put its head even higher. So you sort of open up a can of worms here. So you got to make sure that you follow through on that. But once you get to the point where you can stretch your arms out, lift straight up, and the horse's initial reaction is just to give at the pole, then you know that you have that first systematic give at the pole, and you have a horse that now is ready to work above the shoulder in order to get the wither to give. Now the third hand position that I will use quite often is going to be towards my chest. Now to the outside, this is not a very attractive hand position because in my opinion, sometimes it looks like you're pulling and kicking at the same time, like you're pulling and pushing at the same time, and like I've explained often in my videos, and I've explained in my collection videos, which I get often a lot of negative feedback on this video from people who are not within our industry, who do not understand what it is we're trying to accomplish here. But for me, collection is very simple, is we're trying to collect something, and we're trying to collect our horse to hold itself up. So we're collecting our things, collecting our horse, and having him hold itself up. So it's that simple. It's as simple as that. So I don't really care what terms you use to refer to collection when training your horses. I call it collection because this is literally what I'm trying to do. So so I hope that settles that debate as far as I'm concerned. But to go back to that is, I always work, and I talk about this often, is we work in diagonals, okay? So if I have both hands right here near my chest and I got my legs back and driving my horse into the bridle that way, to the outside it'll look like all I'm doing is pulling and kicking at the same time. But I'm always prioritizing my diagonals. So even if I'm going straight, I'm going to have, let's say, 30 to 70% pressure in one hand, where the outside hand will only be there for support, and the inside hand, even though they are in the same height and same position, will have more pressure. I will be looking in that direction, and my outside leg will be the one that has, also, the more pressure that is driving that hip under itself, and the inside leg will be there to keep my forward motion and to keep that door closed so my horse doesn't go sideways. So although it looks like all I'm doing is pulling and kicking, I've got different amount of pressure from my outside hand to my inside hand and outside leg to inside leg that is actually pushing my horse's energy in throughout a diagonal. And also, this is not something that I will go with full pressure or full contact from the get-go. When you teach a horse to go forward into the bridle, you start slow with a light amount of pressure. When you get a little bit of a give, you reward the horse and you build it that way. I've got a lot of videos on pressure release training and such things that you can refer to and understand really how it's done from the beginning on. But as far as hand position go, this is a very steady, solid hand position that really allows you to really frame your horse into one position, allows you to be extremely precise, and also probably one of the places where you're strongest physically. So if you've got a horse that likes to push into you, or that that needs a little bit more of a firm hand, this is probably going to be one of the best hand position to really make a statement there until you can bring your hands back above the shoulder. Now the fourth hand position that I use often was going to be quite low. It's going to be more towards the back, towards the hip of the horse, sometimes towards my hip, but sometimes with an extended arms towards the back of the horse. Now this is going to be as a restriction for a horse that sometimes, you know, likes to raise its head, and you just want to teach it to hold it level and maintain that level-headed headset we want when driving them into the bridle. It's not something that I will do often, but sometimes, especially early on when the horse just needs to learn to give to the slight pressure in the mouth with a snaffle, then low is going to be probably one of the most clear way to teach the horse to, okay, you have pressure, just give to that pressure, so keep a light amount of pressure with your hands low, and when you feel that the horse is giving at the pole or at the wither, then you release. And it's also one of the hand position that I will be using a lot when teaching the horse to step into the turnaround, for example, or pulling their nose around and having them follow their nose into either a small circle or into a step around. So I really find that in order to really teach a horse to follow its nose perfectly into either a small circle or a step around, having that arm extended and doing an opening rein and coming and closing low, either towards my hip or towards the hip of the horse, is one of the most effective hand position that I really like to use quite often. So it may not be the hand position that I will be using often to teach my horse collection. It'll be where I will probably teach them how to get away from the pressure really early on. But then after that, move on to having my hands a little bit more forward. But it's a place where I will be pulling my horse's nose around into all of those exercises and tools that I use in order to teach the spin or teach the stop, the rollback or whatever. I will be quite often using my hand low towards the hip of the horse. Now the fifth hand position that I use quite often is not something that I see often other people do. It's quite something that I've developed a little bit more for myself. I'm sure that others do it also, but it's called the inverted position. So what I will do is, let's say that I'm pulling my horse into a small circle or into a step around or into a turn in one direction, and I'll be using my hand low in order to pull them there. But I sometimes, if you do that, the horse may want to escape that energy with out from his shoulder or out from his rib cage and stick that rib cage out or its shoulder out and cause them to sit on that outside pivot foot and just really puts them in an awkward position to really be able to make that nice crossover or actually really follow their nose wrapping around my inside leg. So what I will do is I'll have to close that door. I've got it closed with my leg, and my leg is actually going to be my cue to be going forward or to be stepping into that turnaround, but I need something to close the outside shoulder as well. And sometimes having the hand low tends to sit your horse back and have them suck back, especially on lazier horses. So I want to keep some forward motion, and so what I'm going to do is put my outside hand higher and lift right above the shoulder, or sometimes go even all the way above the neck, like the second hand position that I talked about earlier on, and have my outside hand there in order to really encourage the horse to have that forward motion into that following its nose into that turn while I'm using my inside hand low. I'll also do it while circling. If sometimes I feel that the horse, I need let's say a closer contact with my inside hand, or I need to hold its my inside hand, trying to get control over that inside shoulder right above the inside shoulder. And but I'm also I'm doing this while steering, and I want my horse to react the right way, and I'm doing this to teach my horse how to react, let's say, to pressure from the outside rein, either in a rollback exercise or steering while loping. Well, then I'm not going to have my outside hand at the same height. I might have it a little bit more forward, where my hand would be if I would be one-handed and actually steering in that direction. And I like my horses to follow their nose into steering to one direction or into a turn, or I want my horses initial reaction every time I ask them to go to turn. I want them to look where they're going, lift their inside shoulder, and channel their energy through that turn. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of repetition in doing this maneuver, and you know, either in an exercise at the spin, or actually while going forward at the trot or at the lope, until it becomes second nature. So So having my hands in an inverted position where my inside hand is low, pulling their nose in that direction in the fashion that I've really drilled into them since really early on, and having my outside rein really work the leverage of the bit and mimic a one-handed contact while steering or asking a rollback or asking a spin is going to be the reason that I'm going to be doing invert my hands that way. And it has other benefit that it's hard for me to explain, but I encourage you to try it out, to where you have your inside hand a little bit lower and your inside hand raise it up, and then if you feel that the horse needs a little bit of encouragement to get into that bridle, and you don't want to be pulling harder on both reins or pulling harder towards you, but you feel you need to help your horse find that forward motion into the bridle, well, sometimes just going forward with both hands is not what you need to do at the time, because your initial demand from the inside shoulder should remain the same. Well, just bring that outside arm straight out forward and pull your outside rein higher up in order to make them a little bit, to use that little bit of extra discomfort that having your hand way in the front does, in order to encourage them, to give you that little something that you may be missing. So I hope that I've explained this fifth hand position well enough for you to understand it. If not, I encourage you to go try it out and just feel what the benefit is from inverting your hands that way, and hopefully it'll help you feel the same benefit that I feel when putting my hand in these positions. So obviously there are a few other ways that I like to use my hand that are not quite as common, that I chose to not include in this video, but I want to make a specific video about my personal touch on some ways that I like to use my hands, and that's going to come in one of the videos in the next week. So stay tuned for that, as that's going to be quite interesting. The reason I didn't include it in this video is because I know that I will ramble about this for quite some time, and that would have made this video a little bit too long. And I think that it's such an effective way to use your hand, or for me to use my hand in my program, that I felt, yeah, it deserved its own video. So stay tuned for that. It'll be coming up soon. And there will be obviously a full extended, more detailed version uploaded to Comfort Zone Horse Training video series. So if you're not a subscriber to that, please, I encourage you to go and check it out. There's a 7-day free trial where you can browse every single piece of content in there and see if that's something for you. If that's not, then no regrets. You can just sign out, and it will not have cost you a dime. But if you choose to follow and subscribe, it'll only cost you $23.99 a month, which the price of ongoing lessons averages around $50 for an hour of lesson, where here you have, for half of that price, over 200 hours of content that you can refer back to at all times, and there is an hour of content added every week that you can also have access as much as you would like. So anyways, if you stayed here through this entire video, I appreciate you. If you found any value in this video, please give it a like, as it really helps the algorithm grow my channel and for me to reach more people. Please subscribe if you are not a subscriber, and until then, I will see you in the next video. Cheers.